Okay, so let's see if this works better now. Is it working now? Oh, there we go. Okay, I think we're going to have NQ on here now. And great. Lots of, there it is, my man.
There it is.
This is my first IGTV to initiate myself.
It's an honor, man. How are you
Here I
doing?
am with you. This is so great. Okay, cool. So you're probably a veteran at this. You have to help me. It's fun seeing some of my friends and friends that I haven't seen in a long time popping up on the bottom of the screen. So this is super cool.
Yeah, you'll have to get acclimated, but it's fun actually because it's really low expectation and high impact.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm just right with you right now, and it's great. So let's get into it. I mean, as some people who follow me know, read your book about a week ago, and it really impacted me, as you always impact me. But I think in this particular time, more so. There were certain poems that really spoke to how I'm feeling right now and how I've been feeling for a while. Um, and so first, maybe just give us an update for those who might be watching that don't know your work so well, fans of mine or whatnot, and maybe just give them a little, kind of synopsis of the book and how long it took you to write it, and what we hope to accomplish in this time together.
Great. Okay, well, first and foremost, it's great to see your face, man.
Hey, man, it feels good to see you too.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're doing well and looking forward to this conversation and appreciate you sharing me with your community.
Of course.
And, I haven't done very many of these Instagram lives, at least not before 2.5 weeks ago.
Wow.
And so, my first one was 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And we were almost forced to do it because we had a book that came out during this time of quarantine. And so all of the shows that we had set up got canceled, and we had all these things around Inquire Within.
Yeah.
And, we had murals and we had billboard and all sorts of stuff. And overnight it went away. So we started this kind of virtual tour thing.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to chat with a bunch of my friends that I respect and admire, you included in that list, and then perform some of the poems and discuss the book. So I'll hold it up again. This is the book Inquire Within.
Double.
We're doubling up on them. And if you see the branches mirror the roots, and then when you turn it upside down, the roots become the branches. And then when you turn it to the side, it's lungs.
Mm.
And
Love
so
it.
the two halves of the book are inhale and exhale.
Yeah.
And inhale is the personal poems, and exhale is the social and political stuff. So it's change yourself, change the world. And I've been performing around the country and the world, doing almost 70 shows a year before the quarantine, or poetry workshops. And this is the first time that I've ever had a home for my art.
So great. Well, I mean, I know that I first heard you perform at Summit Series years and years ago, and I know we both really grateful to that community for bringing us together and so many other amazing people together. And I just, the thing that I love is you're able to capture what, at least for me, I'll speak personally, often what I'm feeling. And also you've inspired me to write some poetry myself, which I think is a real gift, like poetry and the spoken word can seem almost like a foreign language to people, and can feel intimidating. And I don't know if I can do this or not do this, but after seeing you perform a few times, it's actually gotten me to do the same. And I try to write little poems to my kids at dinner now, and make things that rhyme. And it's really fun.
That's the highest compliment, man, honestly. Because if someone comes up to me and says, I heard your work and I thought something or I felt something, that's amazing. I mean, anytime anyone listens to me and is moved by my work or inspired by my work, I'm super, super humbled and I'm super, super grateful. But when someone says that they did something in reality,
Yeah.
or they created something,
Yeah.
based on hearing me, it is the highest compliment. Like, it feels like that's what my purpose is. I want, little kids who are 8 years old to say, I want to be a poet when I grow up.
Yeah.
Because I feel that us using our voices now more than ever is literally necessary. And so I love the fact that you ended up writing that poem and sharing it with me and your community as well. It was really meaningful to me, man.
Well, it really has inspired me. I mean, and the thing is I'll just say to anyone, like, I have a hard time giving people gifts because I kind of feel like we all have enough shit.
Yeah.
And if I'm just buying something else for someone for their birthday or for an anniversary or something, it's just contributing to more stuff that we might not need. So I've been giving, like, for instance, my nanny's birthday was last week, and I wrote her a poem. And she loved it. And I mean, I think she really, felt me and felt my appreciation for her. When Heather and I went through our divorce, I wrote her a poem to celebrate it. That might seem a little crazy to some people, but I think that really touched her, and it allowed me to express things that maybe just a note or a toast wouldn't. Because I think when you write a poem, you're not only trying to make it rhythmic and make it, kind of rhyme or not rhyme, doesn't have to, but you're trying to get that deepest thought onto a page to connect with someone. And that's what you do so well. And I think the fact that you've inspired me and others to write poetry is a great thing. I think more poets, like you said, the more poets we can have, the better. And yeah, I think that's just a real blessing. So I don't know, one of the things
can
I
I
told
just say
people.
one thing?
Yeah.
Based on what you were saying about your kids, you were saying that you were like doing little poems for them at the dinner table and stuff like that. You can play the rhyming game with them,
Yeah.
which is super, super fun, which is basically you just start a sentence.
Yeah.
And, you just say, we're sitting here talking, and then you have to respond with a rhyme. But we can do, so we're sitting here
So we
talking.
can eat dinner and then go walking.
Exactly. We'll be on the block stalking.
So fun.
And anyway, so you just go, but you do like a simple rhyme. You do like rhyme, or you do, now, how, wow, bow, and then you just tell a sentence back and forth, and you create a story together. And it's just a fun way to like build your vocabulary, to get them thinking about something in terms of rhymes, and to get them expressing themselves in a new way.
I love that. And I don't know what people's expectation was for this live, but one of the things that I wanted to accomplish was to encourage more people to write poetry themselves or use it as a great vehicle to connect with their kids. And we've already kicked into that. So I guess I have one like tactical question, for instance, is do you, as you're thinking about writing a poem, do you have like to the side a combination of words that are thematically going to connect to that poem that also rhyme, so then you can kind of try to weave the sentences into those ending of the sentences? I mean, how do you sit down and think about writing a poem that would rhyme? Like what are some of the ABCs for people who want to try this out for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think what you said is exactly true, which is that I don't think there are any rules to poetry. I think if you intend something to be a poem, it's a poem. So it certainly doesn't have to rhyme.
Sure.
You just have to have that intention, and you have to choose something that is moving and meaningful to you. And I think that that's why people respond when you share a poem with them. Yeah. Because, it's one thing to tell someone how you feel, but the poem becomes a Trojan horse for deeper emotion. Yeah. And people know that you've taken the time and the effort to create the poem and share it with them. And especially if it's personal to them, I think that lands differently. For me, I write all of my poems based on either being inspired or annoyed or moved by something.
Sure. Just like an entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's when people say, how do you come up with an idea for a new business? I always say I was either inspired or annoyed.
That is exactly it. And that's why actually artists and entrepreneurs have way more in common than people realize. I don't even think I realized the connection between artists and entrepreneurs until Elliot mentioned it to me. Yeah. Who, is one of the founders of Summit and really connected us ultimately in the first place. So anyway, we were talking one day and he goes, entrepreneurs, he was talking about entrepreneurs, and he goes, entrepreneurs like us. And then he just continued on with the conversation. And literally in my head, I was like, the fuck is he talking about? Like us. Yeah. I had never even considered that I was an entrepreneur. And I wish I had owned that earlier, because it would have changed how I approached releasing my poetry into the world. Yeah. So acknowledging that is is now something that's very important to me. Sharing that with other people is important to me. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because you saw a problem, something that bothered you,
Yep.
and you tried to be solution minded about the problem by creating
Yep.
something in reality that fixed it.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And an artist does the same thing. They see something that's a problem, or they see something that they want to celebrate and amplify, and they just find a way to do it through their particular genre of art.
Yeah. Well, I think with something that I always get so much from our conversations, but one thing I'm really going to take away already is I think that we should encourage artists to own that they're entrepreneurs more, and vice versa. Like, I need to own that I'm an artist. Like, that's really, that just I have like goosebumps. Like, that makes me feel empowered to use my superpower as an entrepreneur more if I refer to myself as an artist. Because when I think of artist, I think of really pushing the edge of creativity, really pushing the social norms, like really going after it. And at this stage in my entrepreneur career, it's easier to kind of play things safe, do the research, do the focus groups, like know what the market's going to need. It still might be a response to a problem or something I'm annoyed by. But I think to allow the artist in an entrepreneur is when you're going to get greatness from an entrepreneur, and vice versa. Like, so I think that's just already, I think that's a great takeaway, because we probably have a lot of artists and a lot of entrepreneurs on here with us. So that's great.
Yeah. Like, look, what do artists do? They play.
Yeah.
What do I do when I go out? I'm playing tonight. You want to come watch me? I'm doing my show. I'm playing. I'm playing at 8. And I think that's because artists are supposed to go outside of their comfort zone to create. And that's why I don't strategize my inspiration. I don't think, like, what do other people want to hear, or what is something that's popular in culture right now, and then I'll create something, and then I'll surf the wave of that popularity. That's boring to me. And I think that strategizing your inspiration is one step away from manipulation. And if you're manipulating the audience, you're manipulating yourself first. But look at life in general. It's like, we get old enough and we stop playing. We usually find something we're good at. We find something we get paid at.
Sure.
And we calcify. And we stop pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones.
Yes.
But entrepreneurs don't have that luxury. Entrepreneurs have to adapt, and they're always outside of their comfort zone, and they're always risking. So I think there's that natural connection there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You remind me of what you just said about the referring to playing. There's a great Chateaubriand quote that I love. I'll pull it up in a second, but it talks about, kind of the master in the art of living. No one can distinguish whether they're working or playing. To them, they're always doing it both simultaneously. And I think, when I find people who are truly kind of living in the flow, they have found something that no matter how hard they're, quote, working, every day feels like an act of play. And I think that's, kind of my prayer for everyone, is to be able to find that. And during this time, when we're forced to press pause, I think is an incredible time to pause and really ask yourself, like, am I doing this job for a paycheck, or am I doing this because this is my contribution to the world? And does it feel like work, or does it feel like play? And I think if it feels too much like work, now might be the right time to rethink, how you're spending your time once we are, no longer on lockdown. And that's hard for people, but it's the truth.
You're hitting on an important point, which is what are we doing with our time? We only have this life, and I know that people are going through major pain and suffering right now.
Sure.
And so I'm not in any way belittling that or pretending like it doesn't exist. There's real shit that individuals have to deal with, and there's real shit that we have to deal with as a collective humanity and as Americans right now. But I think it is also a global pause.
Yeah.
And it's a time to rethink how we are moving forward. and
Yeah.
whether we evolve from here or we devolve. And I think that for a person to usually make a systemic change, they have to face a trauma, and society is no different. So this trauma, as painful as it is an opportunity for us all to rethink how we're living our lives and to decide if there's a way we can be of more service to ourselves and to the world.
Yeah. I think you hit on something that I would say is kind of, at least for me, has been like the big elephant in the room in the last couple of weeks. And that is this real distinction between two experiences of this time period. There is a very specific group of people that is challenged tremendously. They're living in total fear. They don't have, any income to fall back on. I mean, this is one of the most horrific and challenging times.
Yeah.
And those are also the people who are working on the front lines, people who have, contracted the virus. And I think that it's an interesting thing because if you're not in that category and you can have access to all your basic needs, you have a home you can be in comfortably, you have the time to do what we're doing right now, and anyone who's watching. And at the same time, I feel like myself wanting to apologize for that, to be completely honest, and like feeling uncomfortable with that. And so I'm trying to find the balance between how do I use this pause to do my own inner work so that I can come out stronger and have bigger contribution to the world. At the same time, how do I dig deeper into my personal philanthropy? And, whether you have $1 to give or $10 million to give, how can you give in a way that feels sacrificial and that really brings you closer to what it feels like to serve and to give in a time of real need? And then how do you live that balance day in, day out? And so just personally, that's my everyday, like that's the thing I'm trying to really think about. And the thing that I'm challenged with is the very large distinction between the difference in experiences people might be having, or I might be having with someone else. But what that's brought attention to me, and I'd love for you to comment on this, is just the vast inequality, economic inequality in our country, and how this situation is exasperating that even more. And where do you think we have to go after this, or what is this bringing the ideas or thoughts or words to your heart on how we deal with that? Because I think for me, that's one of the massive learnings that I've had in this experience.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can talk about America or we can talk about the globe. I mean, there's massive inequality in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a part of the reason that this is happening, is that we're continuing to profit off of the suffering of people and the planet. Yeah. And whether we're taking part in it ourselves or we're co-signing it, we're all a part of the system, and, when you're a kid, you think, I'm going to change the system. Like, I'm going to revolutionize the system. And in many ways, you're one of the people that has. But we all think that when we're growing up, I'm going to change the system. And then oftentimes we just get older and we become a part of the system. Yeah. And it's just a natural evolution. It's like getting gray hairs on your beard. It's like before you know it, it's there. And then if you don't, exactly. If you don't pay attention longer than that, you become the system. And there's literally no separation between you and the system. Yeah. And so that's why this is a global shakeup for us to have an opportunity to look at capitalism without a conscience, to look at globalization in the way that it's playing out in this particular situation, and to look at the massive amounts of inequality in the world. And also, to acknowledge what you said, which is really, really important. Quarantining brings a certain set of challenges for every single person. But if you are quarantining right now, you are living in luxury. Exactly. That we have the privilege to quarantine.
Exactly.
Is unfathomable. And we should really all take that into consideration, because a lot of people don't know, if they're going to be able to keep the roof over their heads, if they even have one. Yeah. I don't know specifically how we need to change this afterwards. Yeah. But what I know is that capitalism has to have a conscience.
Yeah.
You know, we can't only consider success growth. You know,
Sure.
it can't, the new economy somehow has to be more about access than excess.
Amen. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, as an entrepreneur and a capitalist, I've always just kind of bought into this idea that capitalism helps bring the greatest ideas forth and creates jobs and all these things that, we're told. But I mean, to be completely honest, like I'm looking at countries that are more socialist, and I'm seeing, the fact that, these countries that provide education, healthcare, like the basics,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing the real value in that, and I'm seeing the real value in much higher taxation for the rich, so that we can try to bring the gap, and get and bring more people from just like literally working 90 hours a week just to pay their health care and their rent. That's not
Yeah.
living. And to me, I'm a big part of that. Like I recognize that, but I'm willing and putting it out there and trying to meditate on the fact that like I'm willing to change some long held beliefs myself if that can help others get there too, to create a more just society, because it can't continue this way. And I think hopefully people are waking up to the fact that it's ridiculous that they spend their whole life just working a job that they probably hate just to pay these basic things like their school loans.
Right.
And we can't go back to that way. I mean, and so I'm hoping that that creates enough anger and frustration and maybe a light bulb of like, well, during Corona, I didn't have to pay my medical bills, or I got, they were more lenient on my rent. I mean, like, I don't know the answer, but I know that for me, my eyes are just like wide open right now to a system that I have celebrated and pushed forward. And so it makes me a little nervous and insecure to say that, but it's just the truth. Like, I just feel like it's not necessarily the system that is creating the greatest good for all. And that's, how I want to live my life.
I got to say, though, I want to acknowledge you because you were one of the pioneers, if not the pioneer, of course, in one for one. But
Yeah.
there is an element of conscious capitalism in a major way with everything that you have brought
Sure.
into reality with Tom's and with your
Yeah.
business workings. And that came from you.
Yeah.
There was a way that you looked at it like an artist
Yeah.
in your entrepreneurship,
Sure.
where you went, I want to see it from a completely different angle. And I think if every company and corporation found a way to give back in that way, the whole entire country, if not the whole entire world, would change overnight. But oftentimes still, the only way to value the company when it goes public is it making more money?
Yeah. Or is it growing? Yeah.
Is it growing? And by the way, I understand that, because as human beings, what do? We grow. And when we stop growing, a part of us does die.
Yeah.
And so it is understandable, this need to grow, but this need to remove ourselves from the ecosystem is so dangerous. To think that we are bigger than the ecosystem. And you didn't do that, man.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I have the highest respect and admiration for you, by the way. And you did it when it wasn't popular. You weren't doing that so that people would see you in a certain way. You were doing it because you wanted to do something, because your heart was telling you to do it. And it's the same thing that you did when you moved into the gun violence activism conversation.
Sure.
And so I actually want to acknowledge you in that. I mean, look, I'm thinking about the same thing. I'm thinking about, like, I speak about all these different subjects, but how do I actually support and show up and be of service in reality? Yeah. And how can I change my life to do more of that myself? And so, if we're awake, we're all thinking about those things right now.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you saying that. And I do, in my own heart, I acknowledge the small part that I've played and that Tom's has played. I think what I want to encourage people, and I'm encouraging myself or challenging myself, is to continue pushing the envelope involving. So 13 years ago, the idea of giving a pair of shoes away was totally radical.
Mm-hmm.
and no other companies are doing it. And now there's so many companies that are incorporating some give back in a way. But I'm almost saying now, I think give back is outdated. I think it's just giving. Like it
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be happening after, it should be happening during. And that's what we did with Tom's. It was always you buy a pair, we give a pair. But I think even more so, what we're being called now is to rethink how the actual structure of our businesses affect all the stakeholders. And that's what I think conscious capitalism really is it's not just, selling something to someone who can afford it so that you can help someone that needs help. It's all the stakeholders in the supply chain. And so, I think as whether you're a business or an individual, I think thinking more about how does our life affect everyone in it versus having such a very specific kind of formula is where I'm kind of going myself. We lost you in here.
No, sorry, man. I had to plug in my phone. That's why I was saying. I just want to say that's why I was saying these things are high impact, low expectation.
I love it. No.
One thing I want to say off of what you were saying, I think, is that's good, and then it matches with me having to plug in my phone. Is that this idea of everything having to be perfect?
Yeah.
This celebrity culture thing of looking up to people or down on people, I think is starting to fall away a little bit more, which is good because, that allows us to see each other more. And if we actually saw each other, we would realize that all of our stories and all of our lives and all of our dreams are important.
So I want to take a break for a second and read something from your book, because something you just said was very much in line with one of the poems that really spoke to me. And for those of you who have the book, it's on page 23. I feel like I'm talking like this is the hymnal. And turn to page 23 and read along with me. But it's Say Yes. And the thing I love about this, and you can see here that I've underlined it, and I've actually written on the front cover of my journal right now, it says, "The only thing I know is that we're all in this together. And the future of this earth depends on how we treat each other. But how we treat each other starts with how we treat ourselves, and how we treat ourselves starts with how we see ourselves." And I love that so much because and this goes back to the state that we're in right now, if you have the luxury of being quarantined and you have the time to think about yourself and how you see yourself, I think there is potentially no better investment, because you can't affect others until you get secure with where you stand or where you sit in your own being. Yeah. And I love that line about how we treat each other starts with how we treat ourselves. Because one of the big passions and things that I've been working on for the past year or two, and the gun violence initiative ties into that, is just the massive mental health struggles in our country. Yeah. And it affects everyone regardless of your income bracket. I mean, I dealt with some mild depression 2 years ago that had a huge impact on how I thought about spending my time and resources and energy. And as I looked into it, I recognized there's more people struggling from a mental health standpoint than ever in history. More people are taking antidepressants than ever in history. Yeah. More people are taking sleep aids than ever in history. More people are reporting extreme loneliness. And so I do think this is a time, and as your poem, speaks to us, that, how we're going to affect others starts with how we treat ourselves. And so maybe if you would just elaborate a little bit more on that, or any personal practices you do so that you can show up for people in an authentic and present way. Like what is Adam doing to be ready to do that?
Well, first of all, I really do believe what I said. I think that everything is vibrating energy, man. Mm. This whole thing, there's a spiritual reality and there's a physical reality. But, if you zoom in to your body, it's mostly empty space in the cells. And if you zoom out to the universe, it's mostly empty space. Yeah. And so we're basically like a sea of consciousness. Mm. And as I said, we're vibrating energy. Yeah. And, what your frequency is, I think, changes what you're attracted to and what you're attracting. Mm. And that's why the cover of the book is the branches and the roots, because it's a mirror. It's as above, so below. And what you see outside of yourself often starts inside of yourself. And how you treat other people is how you treat yourself.
Yeah.
So the question is, are you your own best friend?
Yeah.
And,
Like
you know, we're never going to be perfect, man. Perfect is fucking boring. We wouldn't even ever grow if we were perfect. We wouldn't even ever change if the environment was exactly how we wanted it to be. Why are we even on this live right now? You know, it's because the environment changed and we were lucky enough to be able to adapt in this modern crisis like this.
Yeah.
So look, I think how we treat ourselves is a really, really big deal. And I try to treat myself with as much care and respect and love and understanding as I can. And I try to treat other people with the same. I've dealt with depression my whole entire life.
Wow.
And yet I've learned not to be so afraid of my pain.
Yeah, that's just feel it, right?
Yeah, because it's just, as we talked about, energy.
Yeah.
And energy has to move through you. So ultimately, when I'm going through something, instead of exacerbating it by distracting myself or ignoring it and, you know, going to other things that numb it, or blaming other people, or blaming God, you know, it's like, you know, blaming God is like yelling at yourself in the mirror, because
Amen.
no matter what you say, you will be waiting for yourself when you are done, and God will be waiting for you too. So instead of doing all that stuff, I just try to take the energy and create rather than destroy. You know, a lot of the people that are externalizing their internal hate, they have reason to be angry.
Yeah.
The system is fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, we're sold through consumerism over and over again our own insecurities.
Yeah.
Buy this in order to be loved, or you're worthless. You're not as good as these other people. Everything is like a comparison culture.
Sure.
You know, and so I think that people, you know, people are depressed, and rightfully so, but we have to take that energy, not be so afraid of it, be vulnerable from a place of strength, and create rather than destroy. And so that's what I would say to anyone, which leads us back to, you know, why I'm so encouraging of people writing poems. It's because it's a way to transform energy.
Yeah.
It's a way to alchemize negative
exactly.
emotions and create rather than destroy.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I don't know. I've never done one of these, so I'm curious. I see some questions coming at the bottom of the screen. Do you want to take maybe 10 more minutes and answer some questions and then put a wrap on it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm down. This is fun.
Okay.
I like rapping with you anyway.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, one thing, if you have a question, pop it up, and if we see it, then we'll try to respond. But one thing you just said that I wanted to, a big insight I had about, I don't know, maybe in January, is I was reading this, one of my favorite Jesuit priests, this guy Anthony de Mello, who was a Jesuit priest out of India, and he passed away a few years ago, but he wrote some amazing books. And he wrote something that really changed, I think, potentially the way that I live my life now. And I just read it this January, so I want to share it before we do question and answers, because what you just said really brought me back to that. And that is, he said that the greatest lie that we're told as kids is that the most important thing to feel in the world is to feel loved. And at first when I read that, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, I think that's a pretty healthy thing to feel loved, you know? But then when I saw what he wrote, you know, the problem with that is if you're first trying to feel loved, ultimately that's going to translate into the need to feel successful, the need to feel accepted, the need to feel all these things that ultimately you're doing all only because you want to feel loved. So we might not label it as I'm doing all this to feel loved, but ultimately that is the source of what we're trying to feel. And he said instead the most important emotion and the most important experience as a human is not to feel love, but to give love.
Mm.
Because if you're focused on giving love, you're free. You have no expectation or need or anything back when all you're doing is focused on giving love, and you can be in a state of peace because you can control how much love you give. You can't control how much love you get and how you feel when you're getting it. And so
that's so true.
That was a really big moment for me when he explained that in this book called Awakening that I read in January. And I think a lot of what we're trying to think through during this time is what can we control? And there's a lot less we can control today because of the situation that we're in. And I think that's what's causing a lot of people to really struggle, is they don't know when this is going to end. They don't know when they're going to get if they're going to get their job back. They don't know if, there's so many things they don't know. And so the reality is that there's most of life is out of our control. And when we accept that and breathe into that and let go of that, then we can focus on what we want to do with our time. And I think that is what we export, and that is love. And I think that's what you do through your poetry. So hopefully I'm not paused. Oops, we might have lost NQ for a second. Let's give it a second and see if he comes back on. If not, this has been great, and thank you all for staying with us for the past 40 minutes. It flew by. The name of the book, someone just asked, is Awakening by Anthony DeMello. And I highly, highly recommend it. It's a very quick and easy book to read. And then NQ's book is obviously Inquire Within. Okay. So I don't know. Let's see here if, hey, Winter, how are you? Let's see if NQ, I'm going to try to see if he can come back in here. And yeah, I think he's coming back in. And if anyone has a question, we'll take 5 more minutes.
Hey,
there he is.
I don't know what happened, but I'm
You're
back.
It's cool. Hey, nothing's perfect. Hi from Argentina. Okay, we have 5 more minutes, and
I can perform, by the way, if you want me to do something.
Okay, great. It's so weird. I have some really good friends that are musicians too, and I always want them to perform, but I always feel awkward asking them. So since you offered, then why don't you?
Do you want to choose? What would you want to hear?
Okay, I'll tell you what I want to hear, because I thought you might ask that question. And the one I think that is very relevant right now is Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis. Wow.
Yeah.
I love hearing what people like, because it's never the same thing, which is really an amazing gift that people are drawn to different poems. I wrote Metamorphosis when I was in Kenya.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I was on a safari and I was walking, and for whatever reason, the first line came to me. Once there was a bird who fell in love with a fish.
It's amazing. I spent a lot of time in Africa through all my work with Toms, and there's something about the energy there that always inspires me. And so I'm not surprised to hear that you were inspired. So yeah, if you'd perform that one, that would be amazing.
For sure.
Awesome. Okay, guys.
Even when I was in Africa, the birds are so loud there, man.
Yeah. And
their songs are so beautiful. I remember thinking, like, God, we spend all this money on sound bowl healings in West Los Angeles, and really the birds were like reconfiguring my cellular structure.
Oh, there's nothing like if you get the pleasure of being somewhere where there's no noise pollution at all, and you realize that there's so much more beautiful nature sounds happening in any environment, not just Africa, but in any environment. But it's just kind of like light pollution in a city. You can't see the stars. The stars are still fucking there.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's just we are getting in the way of witnessing the vastness of space, just the same we're getting in the way of hearing those birds.
That is a great line. You should start writing a poem with that. Even when you can't see the stars, they're there.
I like that. I'm going to write that down here in my journal.
That's exactly how I write. I just take something out of reality that feels like it resonates. And that is such a unique concept, that the stars are always there. even when we can't see them, you know, that it's actually the pollution that's blocking the way. But if you remember that, then you remember that there are lots of things around you that you might not see, but that doesn't mean they're not there.
Yeah.
And I love that because it draws me into the poem. It's a moment of truth. And if you start a poem with a moment of truth, then the rest of the poem will almost write itself.
Yeah.
You know? So, okay, so this is my moment of truth. And it's called Metamorphosis.
Great.
Once there was a bird who fell in love with a fish. He was flying over the ocean doing flips and little tricks. He soared up high into the sky, then turned and did a dip, falling fast into the water. He decided he'd get wet. I'm gonna start again. Once there was a bird who fell in love with a fish. He was flying over the ocean doing flips and little tricks. He soared up high into the sky, then turned and did a dip, falling fast into the water. He decided he'd get wet. So he took a breath and dove into the deepest, darkest blue. But underneath the sea, he did something he wouldn't normally do. He opened up his eyes for the first time in his life. Then he looked around until he grew accustomed to the sights. He saw 1,000 shapes and colors swimming in and out of sight. He saw the floor dancing weightless to the shallow beams of white. He had never known this world, yet somehow it felt right, like it was home all along and he'd been visiting the skies. Then suddenly there was a flash. From the corner of his widened eyes, he saw a fish swim past. She was beautiful to his surprise, so graceful in the vast. She floated differently than him, but he recognized her path. Maybe she could teach him how to swim. There weren't words to ask, and yet they stopped to say hello. They circled slow, then fast, mirroring where each other would go. He knew it couldn't last, but the moment was eternity. And though his breath was failing him, he had no will to turn and leave. He wanted to scream out. He longed to fly beneath the seas. The fish was nodding now. Apparently, she too agreed to swim amidst the clouds. With you is where I want to be. She said this without sound. They were sharing a collective dream. He felt his lungs press. He felt his heart compress. His head was saying no. His body saying yes. He reached for one caress, then sprinted towards the surface. He shot into the sky, and yet the air he got was worthless. He quickly turned. It took him merely seconds to return, yet his love had disappeared. It was a slow and painful burn. Years passed, searching for the one that got away. He scoured every ocean, every stream, and every lake. He even doubled back just in case he'd made mistakes, but she was gone without a trace, so his soul ached for his soulmate. He was close to giving up. He landed on an island and collapsed, exhausted from his trip. And as the tides turned, he thought about his lost relationship, and he mourned until his wings transformed into fins, beak into gills, feathers into scales all around. His skin was translucent. He was flopping on the ground, but then a wave came and lifted him into the sea. It's like the ocean wanted him enough to set him free. And as if on cue, she emerged from out the blue. He had flown around the world, but never seen such a view. She was gorgeous, fly in the endless abyss. He was high, see no sky could ever compare to this. He swam over clumsily, she greeted him with a kiss. Somehow their love had been a catalyst for metamorphosis. And if I had to sum it up, I'd say that's what the moral is. He became what he was because she loved what he is. See, it's true that a bird can fall in love with a fish, but eventually they're going to have to find a place to live.
I love it. Oh, thank you. What a blessing. I love it. And I love that he became what he was because she loved what he is.
That's what you were talking about in terms of unconditional love.
Yeah.
when we got cut off. It was about giving, you know,
Mm.
because getting love is an endless pursuit. There is never
Yeah.
an end to more. And it's like you don't have to get love, you are love.
Exactly.
You know, you don't even have to give love, you just have to be love, and you
Yep.
are giving love.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the only way that the metamorphosis could happen in this poem is by unconditional love and acceptance. And in the unconditional love and acceptance, there was transformation and metamorphosis.
Mm. What an invitation to where we all are today. Like that's I think why that poem spoke to me so much 10 days ago when I read it for the first time. And
Thank you, man.
I'm so thankful that you just performed it for us.
Yeah, and
My,
I'm grateful
my,
to you, man. Thank you
my
for
heart is
sharing me
full.
with your community, man. And thank you for everything you do and everything that you are, man. You're such a light in this world, and I'm grateful for our friendship.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who joined us. My first IGTV was awesome. So I'll maybe do some more. If I can find people as inspiring as NQ to chat with. But thank you so much and have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Yeah, you too, brother. And lots of love to everybody. And if you get the book, tag me and let me know what you
Not
think of
if
it.
you get it. I mean, I'm telling you, like this has blessed me so much during this time. You know, because I do think I'll just say one other thing about the book is reading poetry, especially before I go to bed, is such a different experience than reading fiction or nonfiction. Like I love nonfiction. I love biographies. I'm constantly trying to learn something new. And every once in a while I love, you know, losing myself in a great fiction novel. But something about reading poetry with the kids, with the family, before I go to bed, it just has a different texture. It has a different experience. And so if you've never bought a book of poetry before, now's the time. And this is a great place to start. The only disclaimer is it'll be hard to find something better to back it up with once you fall in love with reading poetry. So thank you, and I love you guys, and let's get the book and let's all write some poetry together. Send it to NQ.
I love
Peace.
you, Blake. Thank you, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye.